Morning.
Good morning.
Thank you so much, Kathleen and Mark. That was beautiful. Thank you for helping us get centered in our space today. My name is Jane. I am the service coordinator and quite tall. Thank you. Today is September 22nd, 2024. There are lots of things going on at North Chapel. Please use your order of service. They've got all of the upcoming events and little groups in there. One reminder from Megan, if you would like a hard copy of the Covenant sign-up sheet for the Covenant group, they're available in the back. And you can also check the website for any other announcements. And Mary, I think you have an announcement, right?
I could have had Jane do this, but Ann Marinello and I will be with a clipboard for buying wreaths. So we have to have our initial order in on the 30th, which is a week from tomorrow. So if you'd like a Christmas wreath, even though it's just fall, please see us in the back of the church. Thanks.
And one more announcement, also a little reminder, soup. I know I didn't say it right, but soup. Soup.
We've put together a sign-up sheet for serving soup. Yes, I'm short. Soup or chili, a warm meal, and rolls on the green on Sundays and Mondays through foliage. And a link to that sign-up sheet was in Touch this week. So we'd love it if people can participate. Thank you.
Okay, it's gonna be a lot of ups and downs today. No pun intended. Tatum's going to be guiding our children in spiritual exploration. Thank you so much for that. And if you're visiting today, we know we have a few visitors. Feel free to sign the book at the back for the guest book. That would be great. Final warning, make sure your cell phones are turned off or silent. I'm the worst at that, so. Coffee morning's going to be downstairs, and we invite you to come and visit with us after the service. And then if you will, please clear your thoughts and your mind, and we're going to go ahead and open up for hymn number 331, Life is the Greatest Gift of All. Rise as you're willing and able. I'd like to share a thought with you before we go into a time of prayer and meditation. It appears fall is on us. We get to travel nice and slowly through town as our visitors are enjoying our home and seemingly missing all of the crosswalks that are available. But the air is changing and the temperatures are dipping and the colors are becoming so vibrant. The trees and woods around us that just a few short months ago were bright green with buds and fresh growth are now preparing for colder and harsher times ahead. Those trees that work so hard, drawing energy up and pulling from the ground, twisting and turning to the sun and jostling for space to grow the leaves, to capture more sunlight, more water, more space, and now cutting off connection with the very thing that it grew, discarding its pride and joy. As we marvel at the process and we celebrate the colors, we mark this change with apple picking and cider and pumpkin everything. We smile at the red and the orange and the purple and the brown falling to the ground. And I ask you, how many of you celebrate change? Or are you like me? Are you resistant to change? Even scared of it, stubbornly ignoring it? Why do we celebrate the changes and the processes that Mother Earth shows us, but we fight it so hard for ourselves? Without discarding the leaves, the trees that grew so diligently, the tree would not be able to survive if it were not to discard those leaves. What if we moved our minds to know that sometimes we need to discard our most prized possessions, our pride or our crowning glory, to prepare and welcome a wind of change, leaned into the cold and readied our souls for winter with faith and trust that spring will return? What are you holding on to that no longer serves you, when you could be releasing it and having gratitude for the opportunity of a new phase?
I was just ready for about 65 choruses of that song. Thank you. Every fallen leaf in autumn is a grounded hero, having lived the whole of its life in midair and in the end coming down to earth for the very first time. My mentor in seminary was a woman named Rebecca Parker. And she had this one-liner that I'll never forget. She said, just remember in your travels, Leon, that you're trying to create a sacred opportunity for the congregation. Remind them and remind yourself that church is the place where the people that you don't like are. I was having one of those days when I couldn't stop thinking about the Polish Brethren, a heretical sect of thinkers from the 16th century. Have you ever had a day like that? The Polish Brethren were believed in communities of tolerance. In the early 20th century, there was a historian by the name of Earl Morris Wilbur. If you don't already know that name, you know that name. Earl Morris Wilbur, you write it down in your head, who wrote a book about the history of Unitarianism. And in that book, he says that the three pillars of our faith are freedom, reason, and tolerance. Okay. And that word tolerance comes out of this Polish Brethren 16th century idea that we should create these beautiful communities wherein communities of tolerance and understanding wherein the beautiful of all faiths is welcomed. We disagree, and we disagree in love. Okay. Becoming heroic requires the making of a sacred space within us, a nest, an enclave, a hollow, a sacred place within which the beautiful can be born and can grow. A poet writes, though I have seen photos of those rugged, weary men, still I think I envy them, the prisoners, caught and confined in some good and holy war, which every war has been, caught and confined in stubbornly clinging to secret information for which I'd rather die than tell, caught in a roach and rat-infested cell, my eye fixed on that thin sliver of hope, the crack of light that keeps us alive in our solitary confinement. Yes, there have been times when I've wished it were a simpler prison, for out here, in this giant field of sunshine, it is far, far more difficult to plan the great escape. A scholar writes, many of us seek community solely to escape the fear of being alone. Knowing how to be solitary is the central art of loving. When one can be alone, we can be with others without using them as a means of escape. A hero finds a way to love and rescue both of these people, the poet and the scholar. The poet's name is Rick Maston. He was born in June of 1929. He died in 2008. He was a Universalist minister out of Carmel, California. The scholar's name is Bell Hooks. She was born in September of 1952. She died 3 years ago in Berea, Kentucky. He was white and she was black. He was male and she was female. And these details are exquisitely important and consequential and also simultaneously irrelevant. They are of no concern at all, not for any of us, when it comes to the path that leads us through the lonesome valley, the path that we must take to become ourselves. You may know the Pete Seeger song that he used to sing. You've got to walk that lonesome valley. You've got to walk it for yourself. Nobody here can walk it for you. You've got to walk it by yourself. Can we try that? You've got to walk that lonesome valley. You've got to walk it for yourself. Nobody here can walk it for you. You've got to walk it for yourself. Beautiful. Inspired as he was by a man named Woody Guthrie, Pete Seeger used to introduce the Lonesome Valley song in this way. He would say, "One of the most important things that Woody taught me, and a lot of others, was that you could make a combination between the best of the old and the new. It didn't have to be one or the other. You could mix them up." So there's an old gospel song, Pete says, that Woody Guthrie used to sing, and I think he added a verse or two. I'm not quite sure where the old song left off and the new song began. And the verses unfolded. Pete sang, there were three. The first one was, Daniel was a Bible hero. He was a prophet, brave and true. And in the den of hungry lions, he showed what faith can do for you. And the second verse was, some folks say that John was a Baptist. Some folks say he was a Jew. But the Holy Bible tells us that he was a preacher too. And the third verse goes, although the road is rough and rocky, and the hills be steep and high, we can sing as we go marching, and we will win this union by and by. I don't know of any unions in the Bible, but I think that's the verse that he added, but you can never be sure when it comes to Pete and Woody. Pete Seeger said that he wasn't quite sure where the old gospel song that supplied the story about the hero David left off, and where the new gospel song that was supplied by Woody Guthrie began, which is interesting. Daniel was the biblical prophet who was commanded to submit before an unfaithful king. Daniel would not betray his faith, and he respectfully refused. For doing so, Daniel was made a prisoner. He was judged and immediately sentenced to death for defying the social order. The method of execution was being thrown defensively into a den of lions. He was horrified. He was terrified, but he surrendered before the holy, and heroically, he did not surrender his faith. Daniel was a Bible hero. He was a prophet, brave and true. And in the den of hungry lions, he showed what faith can do for you. God took favor on Daniel and sent the angels to shut the mouths of the lions. Daniel survived and was rescued and was exalted for his bravery. His journey was heroic, and it still lives within us somehow. In the old gospel, Daniel refused to submit before an unfaithful king. In the new gospel, Daniel is the union, and the union is Daniel. And it also refuses to submit, is judged, and sentenced. The union is thrown to a den of lions. And even though in the union there are many, those within it have to take the hero's journey by themselves. You've got to walk that lonesome valley. You've got to walk it for yourself. Nobody here can walk it for you. You've got to walk it by yourself. What does it mean to be heroic these days? What does it mean to be brave and true? These days, an artist writes, up where the mountains meet the heavens above, out where the lightning splits the sea, I could swear there was someone somewhere watching over me. What a comforting thought. What a rich and sustaining notion to be watched over in a heavenly way. Almost 100 years ago now, George and Ira Gershwin wrote a song. They famously wrote it out, the words and the music, as they intertwine. They wrote, there's a somebody I'm longing to see. I hope that she turns out to be someone who'll watch over me, right? I'm a little lamb who's lost in the wood. I know I could always be good to one who will watch over me. This song has stood the test of time. Artists have been singing it for years and years and years, from Gertrude Lawrence, who sang it for the first time back in 1926, to Ella Fitzgerald, who recorded it for Decca Records in 1950. Frank Sinatra recorded it, and Ray Charles recorded it, and Willie Nelson recorded it, and Ricky Lee Jones recorded it, and Elton John, and Linda Ronstadt, and Amy Winehouse recorded it, the little lost lamb that she was. It's a beautiful thing to be watched over by some heroic energy. It's a very different thing than being looked over, right? Being looked over means essentially the opposite, which is strange. To watch and to look are synonyms. To watch over and to look over are opposites. It's funny how in language, similar and opposite things can coincide. Good morning and good Sunday. I hope that this new day finds you well. Today is Sunday, September the 22nd, and the title of this morning's reflection is Grounded Heroes. A hero, of course, is a champion of the good and the right and the true. A hero is largely imaginative, largely mythological. Few of us include that word on our business cards. Yet each of us, often daily, participate in things that are heroic. So maybe it's useful to think of the hero less as a thing in and of itself and more of an action, to think of it less as a noun and more as a verb. Heroes do things. Heroes go places. They don't just sit around resting on their laurels. According to Joseph Campbell, a leading expert in mythology, the journey of the hero is about strength and it's about courage. Superman is a hero, but more importantly, his journey is about the fight for truth and justice. Wonder Woman is a hero, but more importantly, her journey is about peace and equality. Falcon is a hero. Hercules is a hero. Even William Shakespeare and Georgia O'Keeffe and Tom Brady and Bernie Sanders are heroes. But they are so because they go on journeys. The journey that we take is so important. The journey is where we learn, and the journey is how we grow. 4 years ago, I shared with you a short story about an old film called The Lion of Winter. The film was made in 1968. In it, 2 men are facing judicial execution, and the first man turns to the second one in fear and in bitterness. Despondently, he claims that nothing really matters anymore. But the second man joined the first man neither in his fear nor in his bitterness. Rather, the first man stayed faithful. He stayed in his power, and he straightened his tie, and he dusted off his jacket, and he smiled. And at this, the second man's gesture of optimism, in the face of sure disaster, the first man cried out, "You fool!" as if it matters how a man falls down. And the second man replied, "When the fall is all that's left, it matters a great deal." They say that our true colors show up most clearly in the fall, most clearly in autumn, I'd like to think. This seems somehow seasonally important as the leaves are turning. It is important to be careful with our responses to fear and bitterness. In real life, right here in Woodstock, right here in our own backyard, 2 leaves are preparing for the changes of autumn, and the first leaf have turned to the second one in fear and bitterness. Anxious about the coming leap to the ground below, the first leaf cried out, "It just feels like nothing really matters anymore." And the second leaf did not join the firsts in her fear and her bitterness. Rather, she stayed centered stayed in her power, and she stayed secure in her faith. The first leaf cried out, "You fool," as if it matters how a leaf falls down. And the second leaf responded, "Have you ever thought that maybe, just maybe, you could fly?" There's an old country song by an artist named Bad Blake. Otis Blake is his given name, but he wasn't going by that. Bad Blake was his stage name in those days, those early days, in those early drinking days, before he matured and became grounded and let his dreams come down to earth. He wrote, "I was going where I shouldn't go. I was seeing who I shouldn't see. I was doing what I shouldn't do, and I was being who I shouldn't be. A little voice told me it was all wrong. Another voice told me that it was all right. And I used to think that I was strong, but lately I just lost the fight. It's funny how falling feels like flying for a little while." It's funny how falling feels like flying for a little while. And it's true, falling does feel like flying when you lack the sobriety to know the difference. Coming to know that difference means taking the journey of the hero. And it's a humbling journey. It's a long, strange trip, as Jerry Garcia might have said. Toni Morrison once said, "If you want to fly, you have to give up the things that weigh you down." Giving up the things that weigh you down is part of the hero's journey. It's a humbling journey. It's a truly scary journey, but it's also a deeply beautiful one. You've got to walk that lonesome valley. I make it sound a little worse than it is. I believe that this journey can be quite joyful. There are tough things in life. There's no getting around that. We either face the tough things squarely, or we make things harder than they need to be. It's rough. There's no denying it. Pete Seeger told us that the road is rough and rocky, but he also taught us to wear boots so that we would be ready for the climb. James Baldwin told us the same thing in a different way. It's hard to see it sometimes out here in this beautiful world, out here in this great field of sunshine, here in the midst of all these freedoms that we enjoy. Baldwin told us, though, that freedom imposes the most rigid discipline. And I don't mean armies or militias or dictators, he said. I mean that freedom imposes the great and rigid discipline of self-responsibility. You are not free. No one is free who is not prepared on every level of his life, no matter what it costs him, and forever, with no rest in sight, forever, to be responsible for what he does and what he becomes. No one is free who is not prepared to live intimately with failure and with the knowledge of one's own death. We have made the tremendous error of assuming that we have achieved a haven. End quote. It's comfortable, seductive even. It's deeply tempting to believe that we can exempt ourselves, to convince ourselves that we have escaped the great difficulties of the world, its challenges, its trials, and its tribulations. In truth, and truly in joy, we are all deeply connected. Now, I was watching the PBS NewsHour the other day. This was the NewsHour that got me thinking about the Polish brethren from the 16th century. I came across a story delivered by one of his guests, a guy named Radoslaw Sikorski, who was the Polish foreign minister. Foreign Minister Sikorski was being interviewed by Jeff Bennett, one of the anchors of the show. Bennett informed us that Vladimir Zelensky was drawing up a plan for how the war with Russia should end. Bennett said, and this I quote, "Poland has been a staunch supporter of Ukraine in its war with Russia and has taken hundreds of thousands of Ukrainian refugees." Bennett then asks, "What are your expectations for the eventual outcome of this conflict, and how is Poland preparing for the best case and worst case scenarios?" Sikorski corrected Bennett in order to share something that is beautiful, spiritually beautiful. He said, "By the way, it's not hundreds of thousands of refugees that we've taken in. It's 1.6 million Ukrainian refugees in Poland, and without a single refugee camp. we have taken them into our homes. On the political level, Poland has provided $4 billion worth of military assistance to Ukraine. On the spiritual level, Poland has taken 1.6 million people from a war-torn country into their homes. Becoming heroic requires making a sacred space within us, a nest, an enclave, a hollow, a sacred place within which the beautiful can be born. Becoming a hero requires making that space in beauty and in joy and in love. In closing, I'd like to share a poem about a hero known as love. I go to this poem when I'm feeling broken by the world around me. David Wilcox says, "You say you see no hope, and you say you see no reason we should dream that the world will ever change. And you're saying that love is foolish to believe because there'll always be some crazy with an army or a knife to wake you from this daydream and put the fear back in your life. But look, if someone wrote a play just to glorify what's stronger than hate, would they not arrange the stage to look as if the hero came too late? She's almost in defeat. And when it's looking like the evil side will win on the edge of every seat from the moment that the whole thing begins, it is love that mixed the mortar. It is love that stacked these stones. It is love that made the stage here, though it looks like we're alone in this scene that's set in shadow, like the night is here to stay. There is evil cast around us, but it's love that wrote the play. In this darkness, love will show the way." And now the stage is set. And you can feel your own heart beating in your chest. This life's not over yet, so we get up on our feet and we do our best. And we play against the fear, and we play against the reasons not to try, and we're praying for the tear that's burning in the happy angel's eyes. It's love that mixed the mortar and stacks the stones and makes the stage for scenes that sometimes scare us. But we don't have to be afraid. We can call upon the hero that lives within to keep us safe. Like the angels that shut the mouths of angry lions in the den, the hero can keep us safe from harm. Every fallen leaf in the autumn is a grounded hero. As we carve our paths through the sky, how can we make room for and create space enough within us for the beautiful to grow? For joys yet unknown and yet unconceived to be born. I think we'll find the answer in the beauty of the day. Clouds are not, may it be so. Blessed be, and amen.